Welcome back. Now we're going to look at edge and shading under the view menu. We've gone over the different ways of maneuvering around the scene. Now let's discuss how to change the look of the scene, the textures, the color, the edges, soft or hard. So let's look under view, and we have a couple options here. We have shadow, fog, edge styles, face styles. Right now we're going to focus on edge and face style. Let's first define what edges and faces are. So let's look on here, on this guy right here. An edge is basically a line. See any of these that are turning blue? Those are all lines. Look around his shirt. Faces, in this case, are his shirt, his face, his hair. That is the space in between lines. This is what you can give textures and color to, as you can see. Back to the edges. To edit these in the way that they interact with the way that you rotate and view the scene, go up to view and let's look at display edges. Now right now it's on. Watch what happens to any of the objects on the screen, but especially the guy when I take them off. See, notice how just around the outside they're there, but on the inside they've disappeared. Watch this one more time. Take off profiles. Now they're completely gone. Now this definitely looks just like a painting, a simplified painting, and this is more photographic where the lines are much more cartoonish or sketched. This is how you may consider doing a final rendering with shades and shadows obviously in full bloom, which we don't have yet. So this is definitely a more photographic look. Let's see. Going back to profiles, what's neat about this one is I'm going to go to the rotate, and what happens is around the outside edges of the model the lines are darkened. Everything on the inside lines become lightened. Now that's what happened here on the guy, is that the outside edges darkened and the inside edges lightened up. Now these will change however you look at your model. So as you're rotating around, you're going to notice that the models will adjust as they're going. So this is a very smart thing that SketchUp does for you. Graphically, this is something you would pick up in Architecture 111 or 112. So let's go to the next one. Alright, back up here, edges, depth cube. Now what is good about this is when you're working with, let's say, a particularly large model and we have multiple buildings and not just these booms but a lot of buildings, you don't want the front lines to be the same thickness and boldness as the lines that are far away. Or actually it should be opposite of that. You don't want the back lines to be as bold and thick as the front ones. So this is a nice way. So the further away the lines are, the lighter the edges become, and of course, as you can see, the closer the edges, the bolder they are. So that is depth cube. So go back up into view and click on extension. Now I've got them all turned on, so this might be a little bit too much. So let me go up here and turn off depth cube for this and display edges back on. Alright, so those of you that have taken drafting kind of know that there's a technique where, especially in architecture, where you'll continue the line a little bit past the line that you're drawing over, kind of gives like a little crosshair on the end. It just gives it a nice sketch look. It's a very architectural thing to do. You wouldn't necessarily use it in engineering, but for what we're doing, this is a nice technique. So you would pick this up in one of the other classes, and hopefully you could use this when you're doing some really nice renderings. Now that we've talked about edges, let's talk about faces. So back up to view, face styles. Again, that is the space, the surface, the plane between the edges or the lines. Now there's a way of displaying this model in, it looks like, 6 different ways. Let's start with wireframe. This basically turns off all the faces. You can see how the drawing has been completely modeled. That is a wireframe. Only the edges show up. So let's turn that back on. Oops. Now hidden line. Now hidden line is essentially a line drawing. You can't see what's behind it. It's just taking on the qualities of the background. It's not transparent. It's just basically a line drawing as what you would on a piece of paper. Now let's do shaded. Shaded is what we've been working with. Now, where it's shaded is if you look right here on this wheel, it's a little bit brighter here and a little bit darker up here. That's what it means by shaded. Right now there's not a lot of detail. Now, shaded with texture, we can apply photographic or digitally creative images and faces in SketchUp. As you can see, our guy here has totally changed his clothes. And right now, the reason you can see that is because it's shaded with textures. Watch what happens when I go back to shaded. He just becomes a representation, a color of it. So go back, shaded with textures, and you can see now, obviously, this would be used for something quite differently later on. What I need to definitely tell you is that drawing with textures slows down your refreshes and how fast SketchUp responds to your commands. I highly recommend drawing just in monochrome, which I haven't got to yet, or in lines. You just need to see faces. Once in a while, checking back in on your textures is okay, but you definitely don't want to draw with it. So, view, face style, monochrome. That is at its bare minimum of drawing in SketchUp. Alright, let's go and look at one last style under face, and that is X-ray. Now you see how everything is solid? Watch what happens. There's still texture, there's still color, but you can see through it. It's become translucent. This is, and including the shading is still there, this is a great way of getting your bearings if you get lost, if you need to address a certain line or edge that is behind another object. This is a great way of doing it. I'm going to zoom in here real quick. And you can see in here, if I was working on this model and it wasn't a component, I could click on this line back here. Now if I turn X-ray off, you can't see it. So this is a great way of getting to be able to pick on particular items if you need to and you're selecting to erase or change. It's totally a great way of viewing your model. You can use X-ray with all the other modes, which is really nice. So there's a shaded, X-ray, there it is. So no different than when you had a texture. So that was faces and edges. Now go back to some of your models and play around with these models and watch them come to life. At this point you're already drawing and playing around in SketchUp, so use what I've shown you and start creating some nice looking scenes. Let's continue with viewing tools in the next video.